Have you ever wondered why Soviet cities look the way they do, a blend of grandiosity and uniformity? In the heart of the 20th century, a grand experiment was taking place in the Soviet Union. Urban planners were not just designing cities, they were crafting the blueprint of a utopia. The Soviet vision was clear: to mold a society that epitomized socialist ideals, focusing on equality and communal living. The leaders of this era, notably Lenin and later Stalin, believed profoundly in the power of urban design as a tool for social engineering. Cities were seen as more than mere places of residence. They were the bedrock upon which a new social order could be built. The layout of these cities had to promote collectivism over individualism, reflecting the core values of socialism. Each city was meticulously planned. Broad avenues were more than just roads, they symbolized the path to the future. Massive public squares were not merely open spaces but places designed to gather the masses for political meetings and communal activities. Residential blocks, often large and imposing, were designed uniformly to reinforce the idea of equality among all citizens. Moreover, these urban designs included large green spaces, where residents could interact and relax away from the industrial life of the city. This was part of a broader strategy to integrate nature into urban life, ensuring a harmonious living environment that aligned with socialist principles. With such grand visions, Soviet city planners embarked on transforming society through stones and streets. At the heart of every Soviet city was the idea of a communal paradise. Planners and architects of the Soviet Union were tasked with creating more than just urban areas. They were building the framework for a society centered around collective living and shared values. This vision was deeply embedded in every aspect of urban design, from the layout of apartments to the expansive public squares that became the heartbeats of these cities. Communal apartments, or kommunalki, epitomized this vision. Designed to house multiple families, these apartments were not just living spaces but a radical rethinking of private life. Each family would have their own room, but kitchens and bathrooms were shared. This structure was intended to dissolve traditional household barriers, fostering a sense of community and collective responsibility among its residents. But the community spirit didn't stop at the doorstep. It flowed into the streets and squares. Imagine vast public squares where workers gathered, not just for parades and speeches but for everyday social interactions. These squares were surrounded by imposing buildings, often government or cultural institutions, reinforcing the omnipresence of the communal ethos in every brick and pavement stone. Adjacent to these squares, one would often find palaces of culture. These were not mere buildings, they were institutions designed to educate and elevate the proletariat. Offering everything from art classes to technical education, these palaces were a testament to the Soviet commitment to cultural enrichment and intellectual advancement for all. Green spaces and parks were another crucial element. These were not just areas for leisure, but were designed as communal gardens, where citizens could interact with nature and each other away from the industrial life of the city. Here, children played, families picnicked, and the elderly walked, all participating in the shared experience of community life. These spaces were more than mere designs. They were the building blocks for a communal way of life. The Soviet urban landscape was a bold experiment in collective living, where every park, apartment, and palace of culture was a thread in the larger tapestry of a community-focused existence. Imagine living just a stone's throw away from the factory where you work. In the grand urban design of the Soviet Union, this was not just a possibility but a planned reality. The Soviet planners envisioned cities where the boundaries between industrial and residential life were minimal, creating what were known as workers' settlements. These settlements were strategically placed near large industrial complexes, enabling workers to live within walking distance of their workplaces. This proximity was believed to enhance the workers' sense of identity and belonging to the industrial mission of the state. It was an embodiment of the socialist ideal where every aspect of life was integrated into the collective ethos. The concept was simple yet revolutionary. By reducing the time and fatigue associated with commuting, workers could be more productive and have more time for leisure and community activities. It was thought that these settlements would foster a strong communal spirit and a deep connection to the workplace. However, this marriage of industry and residence came with its own set of complications. The environmental impact was perhaps the most glaring. With factories so close to homes, pollution became a major issue. Smokestacks and the constant hum of machinery were omnipresent, affecting air quality and contributing to a range of health problems among the residents. Moreover, the blurring lines between work and home life sometimes led to a sense of inescapability. The omnipresent industrial environment could feel oppressive, as if the factory's shadow loomed large over every aspect of daily life. This setup also had the unintended effect of reducing the diversity of the urban landscape, turning these areas into monotonous stretches of gray, dominated by both the physical and metaphorical weight of the industry. Despite these challenges, the concept of workers' settlements had significant advantages. It did, in many cases, enhance productivity and fostered a unique camaraderie among workers, united by their shared environment and daily experiences. This close-knit setup aimed to blur the lines between work and home, boosting productivity and unity. Uniformity in design often reflects more than a style choice, it symbolizes control. In the vast expanses of the Soviet Union, the architecture was not merely about building homes or workplaces, it was a deliberate exercise in showcasing the omnipotence of the state. The cities were canvases, and the government, the artist imposing its vision. The design principles were clear and non-negotiable. Architects employed large, imposing structures that dominated the skyline, a stark contrast to the more human-scaled constructions of earlier periods. These monumental buildings were not just functional, they were designed to overwhelm and impose, to remind every citizen of the formidable power of their rulers. Broad avenues slicing through the cityscape served multiple purposes. They facilitated military parades that showcased Soviet strength and were also strategic, enabling quick mobilization of troops in case of uprisings. The width of these avenues created a physical distance between the buildings, reducing the sense of community and enhancing the feeling of being watched and controlled. Public squares were expansive, often flanked by government buildings and statues of political leaders, further embedding state presence in everyday life. These squares were not just places for social gathering but staged as venues for state propaganda events, designed to forge a collective identity aligned with Soviet ideology. In this architectural approach, every line and angle was calculated to communicate strength and endurance. The very scale and scope of buildings and boulevards were a constant, looming reminder of the state's surveillance and authority. Every building and boulevard was a statement of power, a constant reminder of the state's presence in everyday life. The echoes of Soviet urban planning still resonate in today's cityscapes. As we explore the vast and varied influence of Soviet urban design, it becomes clear that the principles forged in the crucible of the USSR still shape the skylines and streets of cities worldwide. One of the most significant contributions of Soviet urban planning was the concept of integrated residential industrial zones. This approach sought to minimize the distances workers traveled between home and work, aiming to create a more efficient and equitable urban environment. Today, this idea echoes in the mixed-use developments seen around the globe, from the bustling business districts of Seoul to the innovative live work complexes in San Francisco. These modern adaptations prioritize a balance between accessibility and livability, reflecting a refined version of the Soviet blueprint. Furthermore, the Soviet emphasis on ample public spaces has profoundly influenced contemporary urban planning. The grand public squares and expansive parks that were staples in Soviet cities have inspired the design of public spaces that prioritize community interaction and cultural activities. Cities like Paris and Berlin now boast public areas that serve as both cultural landmarks and communal gathering spots, underscoring the enduring legacy of Soviet spatial concepts. However, the adaptation of these Soviet principles has not been without its challenges. Modern urban planners have had to rethink and modify these ideas to better fit new societal norms and technological advancements. The rigid and often austere architectural styles of the Soviet era have given way to more dynamic and flexible designs that accommodate the rapid changes of the 21st century urban life. Moreover, the integration of green technologies and sustainable practices has been a crucial evolution. While Soviet planners often overlooked environmental considerations, today's urban designs increasingly incorporate eco-friendly elements, from green roofs to energy-efficient public transport systems, demonstrating a commitment to sustainability that complements the social goals of Soviet planning. From Moscow to Manhattan, the Soviet influence on city planning has left an indelible mark, shaping how we live and work. As we traverse the wide avenues and towering blocks, we walk through pages of history. Throughout this exploration, we've uncovered the meticulous principles and profound ideologies that guided the design of Soviet cities. These urban landscapes were more than mere habitats. They were manifestations of a bold, utopian vision aimed at fostering a collective society. We delved into the grand blueprints that prioritized communal living spaces, accessibility, and the integration of industry with residential areas. The planners of the Soviet Union didn't just design cities. They sculpted an environment that mirrored their communist ideals, emphasizing equality and functionality. The aesthetics of these cities, marked by their monumental architecture and strategic layouts, were not only about control but also about instilling a sense of power and unity among its inhabitants. This architectural approach has left a lasting impact on modern urban planning, influencing city designs worldwide. Reflect on how the environment you reside in shapes your daily interactions and societal values. Next time you visit or read about a Soviet-planned city, remember, it's not just a place, but a philosophy carved in concrete.